Hello everyone. Yes, I'm making a video after a long time. So from time to time I do take a break, and I think it is important because you sometimes need time to clear your mind. Now, in today's video, I want to talk about the bureaucracy. Now, if you are a Jira consultant or if you have ever deployed Jira in an organization, then I'm sure you will encounter or you must have encountered this situation where your stakeholders or basically people who are responsible for the budget, especially management, they want people to work in a certain way. Now, when we talk about Jira, one good thing and also a bad thing about Jira is definitely its capability of customizations and flexibility. Now, we all know that Jira can be customized. You can always create your own different workflows. And this is great because using a tool like Jira, you can map your processes to Jira. Now, based on my experience, and I'm sure someone who has done rollouts or basically someone who has helped organizations get the most out of Jira, I'm sure you will also relate to it because when it comes to creating these configurations, you should always try to standardize the way people should work. Now, in my books and also in my videos, I always talk about creating some standards like way of working for your organization. Let us say you have a team of five. Not team of five. Let us say you have five teams and you want them to, or maybe 50 teams, to be honest. It depends on the size of the organization. Let us say you have a team of developers and they are working in one business unit in one corporate big organization, and you want all of them to work consistently and follow a same process. Let us say they are developing some software, or maybe they are working on some maintenance or whatever. It could be some routine work. But basically the idea here is that if you have different teams and they are working in a similar way, or they're supposed to work in a similar way, then your management would want to know what is the progress of various activities. And you can only report on a progress when those team members or basically those teams are working in a similar way. So let us say in Jira you have some process where, let us say they are working on features, then you break it down into epics, then you define the scope for a particular PI, for example, or maybe for a particular release, and then you break down your epics into stories and so on. And of course, when it comes to the actual delivery, you want your developers to follow some kind of a workflow, and maybe you have a similar strategy for not only for development but also for testing, also for UAT, and also for going live. So basically, when you have these processes defined, then if everyone is working in a similar way or exactly the same way, because a tool will let them do things that the management, stakeholders, people who have the budget want them to work, then of course in a way you are dictating, or I should say it is like a bureaucratic environment way of working. Now, to be honest, when the organization grows, when you have a big team, then you need some kind of a structure, and people usually stay away or they avoid using these words like dictatorship or bureaucracy because it is, of course, taken in a negative way. But I would say that when you're working as a consultant, and I'm making this video primarily for Jira consultants who are new into this, maybe they are responsible for Atlassian tools deployment or rolling out. And these things are also applicable for a lot of other tools, to be honest. But it's more about finding a balance, especially if you're a consultant. Then I do have some tips. I do have some experience that I can definitely share with all of you, because when you're working in rolling out a tool like Jira, it's not just about, okay, we have deployed this tool, or let us say this Jira cloud instance with these workflows, now start using it. That is how you should not do things. You should spend time in the beginning to review the existing processes or maybe those new processes. And if you are a Jira consultant working with stakeholders management, then you also need some very clear sponsorship or some kind of ownership. So someone should actually own not the tooling side of it, but the whole rolling out or the way of working, or I should say the way your project or program should work. So there should be a clear ownership and sponsorship from management, and you should actually ask for it if there is no ownership or there is no one who is actually going to sign or give you some kind of sign off that yes, go ahead with these processes. And you as a Jira consultant or as an Atlassian consultant should basically in some cases work with that sponsor very closely, because when you have defined or reviewed those processes, your input will be very important, because you will tell them that yes, this process makes sense, but implementing it in Jira is not straightforward, or maybe your inputs will help when it comes to actually going live with that process in the tool. So you always need to speak up and basically raise your voice when it comes to doing something which is weird, because you can, when it comes to processes, people actually go to extreme lengths. They actually create complex processes, and then they expect the tool to behave the same. Now we talked about reviewing and agreeing on a process. We talked about clear sponsorship or ownership from someone, and at the same time document these things, because when you document these processes, I'm talking about doing things before you actually start things in Jira. Document everything, and then of course get an approval from various team, not really team members, but I should say different people who are actually responsible. You can call them as value streams, because that is how things work these days. But basically, don't really dictate a process. Don't really say that, okay, you have to follow this process. Get input from everyone. And when you have something which is documented, you can then version control it. Maybe you have a version 1.1 of your document, then of course revise it. And at the same time, when it comes to actually implementing it in the tool, of course, you can do extreme customizations in Jira to tightly or to basically make that process very strictly in Jira configurations. You can actually do scripting. You can do a lot of things in Jira using workflows. But I believe, based on my experience, if you make a tool a bit more restrictive, then you're also adding friction, and you're also, in a way, making your teams, developers unhappy, because they are the ones who will be using the tool, and the expectation would be from the management that yes, why these developers are not updating the issues in Jira. So make your Jira configurations a bit more. I don't really want to say too open. Of course, your process should be mapped in the tool, but keep it a bit more open, because you should trust your managers, your scrum masters, and also anyone, to be honest, because that is how things work. If you make a process very strict, then it gets even difficult to follow it properly. And at the same time, whenever you roll out any new process in the tool or some kind of a way of working, always communicate. Communication is the key. And basically, I'm making this video where the organization structure is a bit more complex, especially corporates, big organizations, because when you're talking about a small company or like a small team, then you don't really need these many processes, and that is how it should be in the beginning. You should always keep on reviewing and enhancing your Jira configurations to match your processes, because the way you configure the tool will reflect how your organization or your management expect your team to work. And I was talking about communication. At the same time, I was also I really want to talk about the training as well. And I always say that when it comes to rolling out a new tool, any tool, to be honest, training is very important. And there are a few more things that I want to talk about. Basically, configurations in Jira should not be too restrictive. Let me give you some examples. You can actually have different fields, because when you have a field in Jira, people can report on it. And usually people will ask you, management will ask you, why this field is not really a mandatory field, because I want to report on it. But I don't really think that is how it should be, because if you make a field if you make the whole process, or let us say fields mandatory, then it will again increase the friction when it comes to using the tool. And that is actually a problem, because when developers are working, their focus, and I agree with it, their primary objective should be to deliver the code. They should commit the code. But at the same time, if you ask them to spend more time going to stories and updating things and filling out each and everything, then it is not really the best use of their time. And don't make the workflow too complicated, because you can. So what I'm trying to say here is that when it comes to rolling out Jira or configurations, you have to find a balance. You have to find a balance between bureaucracy and also happiness of your employees, and at the same time trust. So you as a consultant, because if you configure a tool that is too restrictive, you might make your management happy, but after a few months or few weeks, if you're not really able to convince people to use the tool effectively, because irrespective of the process, ultimately your team needs to use the tool. And if you make it too difficult for them, they will not use it. And that is how things are. You should look at how your teams are working, spend time with them. If you are working with, if you are a consultant, then you might be working a lot with the stakeholders management, but at the same time, find time and make it a point to also talk to people who actually use the tool on a day-to-day basis, like developers or Scrum Masters, because their buy-in is actually very important when it comes to the success. And that is all. That is all I wanted to talk about in today's video. Bureaucracy in Jira. Avoid it and find a balance. But I hope you found this video useful and you learned something. So that is it. That is it for today's video. Thank you very much. Bye bye.